happened, I was like, oh, that is jarring. Like, that is surprising.
Just going about doing your thing. Like, recording in progress.
Yeah.
And then it says, got it. I'm like, yeah, I got it. All
Got
right.
it.
Got it.
So are
Well,
we?
it's really good to see you guys. I didn't get to see you. Like I saw Amy for like 5 seconds and Aaron for maybe 10 seconds. And
Yeah,
that
I was
was
trying to
about
get us
it.
together for like a picture at some point, and then I just kind of gave up. Like,
Tony and I were together. We were trying to figure out where you were at.
For 10 seconds, that extra 5 seconds would have been the deal breaker there.
My favorite was Mark, because of course we sponsored what, Tuba, the Tuba solo and ensemble room, and Mark's adjustment to Aaron Campbell in the form of Amy Bliss for the award.
because at first he just said Aaron Campbell, and then there's just kind of an awkward silence, and I'm like, and then I leaned out like behind him, and I was like, in the form of Amy Bliss, and then he just kind of. And then he announced.
Did you paint your nails
yes,
green?
I did.
That's cute. Ready for St. Patty's Day, right? Oops.
Oh.
Yeah, we're not going to be able to see with all those notes you were playing.
Good Lord, there's fire coming from those things.
You know, a lot of the champion bands were running 3 youths this year.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Really?
Mm-hmm. There was a lot of 5 in that row. I want to know where did the triangle that what I always forget what names is what youth group, so excuse me. The one that was the very last band to play at NABBA.
That's the Watson Brass Band. That's the top youth band in the Triangle Brass Band Youth Brass Band program. It's named after Perry Watson.
How did they get the Wallace bucket euphonium mutes?
They bought them from I don't know where that place is, in what, Scotland or England or wherever.
Well, I don't think it exists anymore, right? I think they went under.
No, they got them like 3 weeks ago.
Oh, really? Oh, good.
Yeah, you can get them.
Yeah, I saw that. Oh no, their poor wrists.
They bought a whole set of they got the euphonium and baritone mutes, and they got a whole set of cornet mutes. And of course, you know, somebody stole one of their mute bags, the cornet mute bag, and it's gone. They stole it out of the salon while the guys were in there and never returned it. You know, despite every volunteer in Huntsville looking for it. So somebody's got a brand new blue cup mute that doesn't belong to them. It's the one.
It'll stand out if you're looking for it. It'll stand out.
That's right. If you ever play it in a gig anywhere, so you ever see somebody with a blue trumpet or cornet mute, go snag it because it belongs to a kid in Raleigh.
That's awful.
Yeah.
How long does it take you to get to Huntsville from Raleigh?
All morning. I flew. It's about a 9-hour drive. You know, because you're always going to get stuck in traffic somewhere. A little bit longer if you go through Atlanta, because you're definitely getting stuck in traffic there. But I've only driven it once. I drove it for a NABBA board meeting, you know, during the pandemic, and the rest of the time I've flown it just because I didn't have 8.5, 9 hours to drive it, because I had to be working at the thing. So
how long was your trip, Amy?
We left at 6 a.m. and we got there, I think, at 3. But there's a time change in there, so 6 to 2 essentially.
Yeah.
So 8 hours.
I intentionally don't tell my band about the time change.
Why is that?
Because then they get there an hour earlier.
And they're showing up to stuff an hour early all weekend.
Good.
Well, they'll figure it out. They'll figure it out at some point.
They're there on time. So
Never.
Tony, you were the most involved in all the things. What do you want to talk about first?
Well,
can everybody tell we're all exhausted?
I am definitely exhausted. I didn't get a meal. I got a meal lunch on Thursday, and I still haven't had a real meal since. Actually dinner. I had dinner tonight, but I mean, like the whole weekend is it was just constantly just doing something.
It's such a great time, but it always is a fever dream in it. Like you just sit there like Monday, just why?
There was definitely the duck on the pond that the feet are going like this, and
Mhm.
hopefully the duck was just cruising across the pond. But there
Right.
are a few people that were doing some scurrying under the seat, and I was one of them. We were having a dog of a time with the competition suite and the judges stuff. It was we set it up with the same program as last year, and it was glitchy. I suspect that the power outage that blew out or spiked the power surge in the internet in the Von Braun Center and knocked out the internet for 4 hours had something to do with the way competition suite was recording on the wrong channels or the wrong tracks. It was the scores were being reversed in the places they were supposed to be. I mean, it was a mess trying to figure that out. I spent all weekend trying to make sure that by 10 o'clock we had scores that we could rely on, and were the ones that the judges were actually using. So we'll eventually get all the recordings and all the plates and everything, but it was a nightmare. And then having the live stream go down for what, three hours or whatever, it's just it was very disappointing. The Von Braun Center has um they had a rough weekend in my estimation. It was rough.
I mean that did you all hear that lightning strike
Yep.
during I think it was Dallas in the middle of it? And it was right on a downbeat.
Oh, perfect.
It was like boom. I thought it was a bass drum hit at first. And I will tell you all backstage, being just like sitting backstage for championship section for as much as I was, percussion is a very different game when you're on the other side of that wall.
Mhm.
Like I told Gavin Pritchard after that bass drum hit. I don't know if you all saw it, but their last note of test, he moved the bass drum moved. The brakes were on. That's how hard he hit it. And I'm on the other side of the wall. I thought like the second coming of Jesus Christ was going through that wall. Like it was the loudest thing of all time. And so I talked to him afterwards and I was like, you're gonna hear from my lawyer because I was assaulted, sir.
That speaking of bass drum hits, have you guys ever seen the video of the saga of turfing on YouTube from I think it was a contest in Europe, but they have the very last chord of it, they have the view on the timpani. And the timpani player does something, he's like, brr, brr, brr. Although in the score he's supposed to be playing one note, but he did some sort of strange roll thing in there. And then as they do the cutoff, and there's a bass drum hit on it, and then you just see this the head of the bass drum, and it just flies over the band into the audience. Everyone's just like, "That's the hilarious thing ever."
But I thought overall, like it definitely felt like the wheels were churning a little bit more for the conference. Like it felt less it felt like less of the pandemic hangover. Like we were
Yeah.
kind of coming out of
Yeah.
it. Bigger exhibition room, or like it seemed like there was more stuff going on with that.
It was loud in
Um,
there, that's for sure. There was a lot of noisemakers.
and which I mean, at a brass band competition, I guess you got to deal with it somehow.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like, from the organization side of it, I feel like NABBA and Huntsville did a much better job than last year. We learned a lot of lessons last year and we corrected a lot of those problems. I honestly believe that the majority of the issues that we had this year were not related to what we were in control of. They were things that were in the facility at the Von Braun Center. Not having doors on the salons, that was news to us. You know,
Mhm.
um, you know, the construction there, we were told last year that there was going to be renovations, but it's going to be done in plenty of time for your event. And that did not happen. The rehearsal
Though
rooms
the rooms, you were right though, the rooms did look better.
the rooms look better. but they would have been nicer if they had doors on them.
It was nice to play my solo in what felt like, just because of the way it has nothing to do with the front processor. It's just the way it's set up. Because you have this really nice glass pane in that salon one, I think it was.
Yeah.
That really nice glass pane. So it has like, but it has behind it is like the loading docks and everything. So it just felt like a recital being done in an airport terminal.
Totally see that. I can totally see that.
I just say I saw Aaron backstage. I thought this was hilarious. I saw Aaron, and after you won the euphonium technical, and I said, "Oh, what did you play?" And then he said, "You were like Zebakikos from Phil Wilby's euphonium concerto movement. What was it, 2 or whatever?" And I looked at him and I said, "Did you really think that you had to go past Zebakikos?"
Listen, you want to talk about fever dream? I'm not gonna lie. I worked my tail off to win that thing, and so you saw me on like you hear cloud 9. I was on cloud like 45. Like I was so excited about that.
It was just like every euphonium player knows Zebakiko, so you're just going on, and I'm just like, yeah, I had you at.
Well, I live in a world where not a lot of people are euphonium players.
That's funny.
You don't forget.
Somebody asked me when I did my defense, they were like, "What's that thing that all doctors have to do? Like actual doctors? What's that? Like they give their like they swear like that oath. What's that called?
The Hippocratic Oath.
Yeah. They're like, which is your Hippocratic oath? And they were like made some music note. They were like a non-musician, right? And I was like, no, my Hippocratic oath is I have to explain what a euphonium is at any given time.
If you can do this, you can keep your doctorate. Tell me what it was like to have Demandre be the judge.
I will tell you, and this is why it was helpful. That salon one is really long. So he was so far away that I didn't even know he was there.
Oh, good.
So I knew he was there, but I didn't, know he was there, right? So that actually brought the calm. That actually made that more helpful because I wasn't like, oh god, I'm playing a really fast music for Demandre Thurman. But it was chill. It was great. I mean, I got a 97. So he had like a couple comments to say to me. He didn't say much, but the student, like I had a couple students play for him, and he got really good comments for them and some stuff, and everything was helpful. Nothing was like out of pocket or anything like that I saw. And so, I mean, Samandre, he's a teacher and a player. He knows what to say and how to say it and to get the point across. So it was intimidating, but thank God he was essentially a speck on the back wall in terms of how far away he was from me. Thank goodness.
Because I wouldn't be surprised if some soloist came up or came out and said, "Man, that freaked me out." I mean, that was so nerve-wracking to play for Demandre. I remember one year.
He's such a nice guy.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he's superb. I can't think of a better, euphonium judge to have for that section.
Yeah.
I remember somebody playing Flowerdale, knee flat stop solo by Philip Spark for the solo and ensemble thing one year, and gets in there, and Philip Spark is the judge.
No pressure.
Oh, did I tell you about the JMU kid who was waiting? I think it was JMU. I don't know. It was like some 20-year-old something or other was waiting outside, but after Doug Lindsay.
Oh yeah.
And Doug who won cornet technical and like won cornet technical. Like he played the snot out of that thing. And I was hearing through the wall because I was like running papers or something. I'm hearing through the wall, and then Doug leaves, and the kid who's right after him goes, "I'm 20 years old." I will never forget that. That is a core memory right there.
21 years old. This isn't fair.
Right? He just got full tenure, and I am like year 1 in college. But I thought, I mean, I don't know how the score, I haven't done the research or anything like that, but and on the scores and everything, but I mean, I got to listen to all of championship section and interview everybody. And it seemed like a really tight group. Like everybody played stupid well.
I thought that was pretty much the case across all 37 bands. You know, it's like everybody showed up to do their best. I it's kind of why like wherever you placed, you probably deserved it, and um, you got beat by somebody good. It was, it was. I mean, it was that good. I mean, the thing you have to understand about the adjudication is that they don't know who's on stage. They have absolutely no idea. I was with them the entire time. They literally had no idea who was playing, nor did they try to find out who was playing, nor did they care who was playing. They studied the scores for 2 months and were prepared and knew what they were up against. Okay. And they did the absolute best they can. They gave the best evaluations they can, but the numbers, when this is what we work really hard on with them is teaching them and working on how to manage the numbers so that it tells the story. That doesn't mean they're going to agree with each other. The judges don't talk to each other about their numbers. They're not allowed to. So, so I mean, you can look at the recaps and the ordinals are all over the place. If you look at the points assigned, sometimes the ordinal can be, less than 2 points and be 3 or 4 placements apart because they're doing 0.5s, so that, so the ordinal can kind of, give you like, well, I was in 5th place. Yeah, but you were a 1.5 behind 2nd place. That's not very far. That's pretty close. So, so the adjudication stuff is getting better. It's getting more reliable. It's a multi-year process to get this, in play and to develop it into where the number means something that, everybody understands what a nut 93 means and what you have to achieve to get that, to get all the judges and get new judges and better judges and get them to all understand and buy into the philosophy and the ethics and all that stuff. Well, we made a significant process this year in the reliability of the judging. So, I haven't done a full debrief of all of it yet, and that includes looking at the live stream and seeing if I even agree with what the judges did. But they had didn't have the benefit of knowing who was on stage, so they really just went on what they heard. It's a fascinating process that I don't think a lot of people really understand how difficult it really is, especially in the championship section. But it's a massively challenging project to do that.
Speaking of the championship section, I think Five Lakes was fantastic to watch.
Oh yeah.
both their performance and watch them like go through jumping up from first section to championship. Just fantastic.
Yeah. Well, they were definitely the band of the night on Friday.
Absolutely. I mean, it was unanimous on their scoring too. First, all the way across.
They were the clear winners, and they won by enough with the 60% weighting. It almost didn't matter what they did on Saturday.
And they nailed it on Saturday. They were great.
They were great. I'll tell you what I didn't get to see this, and I really wish I wasn't working so I could have seen this. But Atlantic Brass Band, just really shredded the choice
they were
piece.
Great.
Choice piece.
They were great.
They told me to be there. Well, I was going to be there regardless, but they told me like be there because this is really cool. This is going to be like a cool moment. Yeah. And so I made sure to sit up in the balcony because they said, the setup is going to change how we sound. So I sat up there and it was fantastic.
And he even, he messed with the Bellfront brass and directionals and all sorts of stuff. I mean, Sal did a really good job with them. He also goes down as like one of the easier ones. Huh?
Did he do it differently? I didn't get to see it yet. Did he do it differently than the bands over in Europe did it for the what was it, the champion? What did they use that for? Just recently, was it
It was European Brass Band Championships?
That was a test piece for the Europeans last year.
But I've only heard that. I haven't seen it, so I don't know.
Yeah, I haven't.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff in there, and
he goes down though as one of the easier ones to interview.
Sal was?
Oh yeah. He had such like you could tell that he's like a professor because he had such good answers that were like good, and like it was like I felt like I was giving out like comps questions for him the way he was answering them. So like, and him and like Kevin both were like really thoughtful. I was like, I talked about the antiphonal brass thing, and they were both like something along the lines of, well, they can play louder without having to talk or having to play louder, and blah blah blah, right? And like they were giving these very nice informed things. And I asked Gareth the same thing because they messed around with the directional. And I go, Gareth, what was the thinking behind that? And he goes, well, it makes the point, doesn't it?
It makes the point. That's so British. That's so British.
And I was like, what? But also just a very brass player way to put that as well. Just like, play loud. Like, point well, go loud.
I've not seen that interview, but I guarantee you that over enough years with if you interview him, he's going to mention either some reference to opera or a really old movie that's really obscure and probably in another language that no one knows. Because we like go out to the bar and Sal's like, it's like this movie that came out in like 52 or something, and we're all like,
okay, we're lost.
What?
If it wasn't Wizard of Oz, we haven't seen it.
That's actually sounds a lot like our meetings that we had in Indianapolis. That sounds about right, actually.
I used to write like the references. I'd flip over my music and write like the references to like, Italian opera and all of these obscure movies, and also ballet. Like he would be like, you need to, when we played ballet like transcriptions, we had to he would insist that like some of like the dotted rhythms or something, it was going to be slightly out of time because the dancers were jumping. There are no dancers, Sal. but the dancers are jumping in this point.
Speaking of ballet,
he has to put them in there. So that's Sal.
Speaking of ballet, that ballet room, I have to apologize for my basses. We had a thing where we had to cut. We've been talking for weeks of cutting off dry on 4, right? And we've been talking about it for weeks. And I kept hearing them holding over him when we were in that warm up room. And I like raised my hand. I snapped on him. I was like, "You cut off on 4." Yeah, I let him have it. I was like, all of us are doing it. You guys need to do it too. No, it was just the reverb in that big room.
Well,
they were cut off on 4. They were just playing really well, and it was carrying over. And I felt about that big when I realized it.
those huge hits in Year of the Dragon? Yeah, they all came back and smacked us in the face like half a second later. It's like da da don't bow.
Oh my goodness! Walking around the Von Braun Center on a combination of Friday evening and Saturday morning, and just hearing Year of the Dragon from every corner.
You wouldn't have heard Year of the Dragon on Saturday.
And people in the band in the warm up rooms, though, right? Oh no, I wouldn't. You're right, but you're right. You're right.
We were done with it. We didn't.
But I heard it so much on Friday that I was hearing it on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean that was one of the coolest things. Like when we picked this last year to be the test piece, I was so excited. I was like, man, this is gonna be the coolest thing ever. A Year of the Dragon Smack Fest. Something that hasn't been done in 30 years. In the brass band world. I thought it was going to be really cool. I would have loved to have just sat there and listened to 9 of those in a row.
So with the test pieces, let's talk about the next year's test pieces. That might be
let me pull them up. Give me 2 seconds. Man, I'll let you know if I heard at this point.
I think there's a couple of cool things about it. One is the Imogen Holst Unwanted Traveler as the 3rd section test piece. It's not a test piece per se, but it's a really nice piece. It sounds a lot like Moorside Suite. Obviously, the scoring and the
it's 2 years after or 2 years before Moorside.
I believe it was after. I think, but the historical significance of this piece is that it was the first major work written for brass band by a female composer, and the first one conducted at a major event by a female composer.
Oh,
so it's historically significant. as well as just being a delightful piece. I think it'll be fun for those bands to sink their teeth into.
That was a fun moment hearing that, because I remember, I think it was Chris Ward who messaged me on like Facebook or something. I was out in California for a performance, and I had like a day of nothing to do other than score study and do some practice for the show the next day or whatever. And so he was like, "Do you know of some brass band pieces that were written by women?" And I was like, "Oh, I have nothing but time. Let's just do." I found all these things, and I found lots of different pieces. But I ended up telling him, but the Imogen Holst, like, this one's just a gem.
Yeah, I had come across that from a different source, and I can't remember what it was now, but I sent it to Chris, and I was like, "Look, we have to seriously consider this one." And we
So we
found,
both told Chris that we wanted the Imogen Holst one.
yeah, yeah. And there's a Canadian composer that we looked into about 3 or 4 or 5 of her works. She's
Yeah.
written for Hannaford. Um, and I think Corey Band just played one of her pieces. Unfortunately, none of her pieces really fit into the contesting mold.
Mm.
Um, but they were cool pieces. We just really couldn't fit them into a contest place. But
Yeah, for the
we found as close to as many of the female works for brass band that we could possibly look at, and it and you know, and then of course the other cool thing is that through you actually getting in touch with Lucy Pankhurst, we were able to work out commissioning a piece for 2025 from Lucy.
That's I'm
Perfection.
so stoked. I can't tell you. I'm so excited. She was saying that she's turned down potential commissions for test pieces before. And she said this time it just felt different. She wanted to do this one, so she kind of went for it. But it was kind of one of those things that, like, I've premiered all of the Lucy Pankhurst luminaries, with
Yeah.
wind ensemble, with piano and brass band now. And I was gonna go and commission like another piece from her for euphonium. And then that's when it hit, like, what if, and I was thinking initially, like, what if I do some fundraising? I'll do something, I'll write grants, we'll figure out how to like fund this separately. And then it was just like, why don't I just go to NABBA and see if this can work?
This is
And
this is exactly the type of stuff that we want to be involved in,
yeah,
you know. So it's really that was a really exciting part of it for us as well. I think the other exciting thing was the St. James
yeah,
Philip Harper piece that's being used for the Nationals finals this year in the first section in the UK. So we were able to get hold of that, and it's
very
a
cool.
really cool piece. I don't know how many people have heard it yet. I think Corey put a little bit of snippet,
they
some
put like a
excerpts.
teaser out. It was like, come
Yeah,
on.
That's most of this list for me right now is like I looked at it, I was like, I don't know most of these, which is good. Like that's like good.
but that's the funny thing too, is because we're calling off these names and the whole crowd's silent. I'm like, they don't they don't know what they
Well, you're
don't
not
know.
gonna get a reaction like first section last year. You're not gonna
Yeah,
get a
you're the
reaction.
dragon, and they're like,
Yeah, you're not you're just
they're like other
uh,
lies. And it's like, well, it was written a year and a half ago. So of course they're not going to know it, unless they're really super nerdy and watching, brass band videos on YouTube all the time, like I do.
I was about to say, who's calling
um
you a nerd here?
I'm excited for second section. I'm excited about Albinus variations.
Oh, that piece
To get to
is
learn it.
super cool. That piece
Hmm.
is super awesome. People are going to love that piece.
And it's nice that I mean that piece, especially like I like when because unfortunately it being what it is anything we're going to order off of brassband.uk or Just Music or anything like that. We'll order it now and we'll see it in January.
We'll be lucky to get it in January.
So it's nice that the score's available on the publisher's website and stuff. Like in terms of like they have the video with the score going at the same time, so you can actually see what you're in for at least and all that sort of thing. And so the research is really easy. I get to warn my solo tenor horn player that like, hey, you're important next year.
Yeah.
He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, the whole damn thing starts with you, my guy.
Yeah, and we were also to work in a classic Steve Bulla Images for Brass. We had an American composer in there.
I was so excited for that one too because I had already looked into that for my youth brass band to play.
Well, now you have to bring them to NABBA next year.
I think it's going to be 2025.
Well, then they're going to not be able to do Images for Brass.
Well, we're gonna do like a shadow. You know, we'll do like our own, and then we can kind of see like But
how many more? Sorry, go on.
We only had like 15 kids in the first year, so like we need a full brass band first. Priorities.
All right, so this was year 2 at Von Braun. How many more is it for sure at Von Braun? Next year for sure.
We have 2024 for sure with an option for 2025.
Okay.
If possible. But technically we haven't gotten to the part of the process to deal with anything past 2024. Yeah, that's next project this summer is to start
doing. Well, 2023 just happened. I'm just thinking out loud.
I would say that we're probably a little bit late in getting on top of this. Because you have to book these things many years in advance, and that's one of the tough things about when you book something 3 years ago and you're not getting what you thought you were going to be getting. When we booked this, nowhere in there was there's going to be renovations that were going to practically ruin your event. So it's a tough thing. It's even the Von Braun Center, a fully professional hall like that, doesn't do events like ours. It's an incredibly unique event.
Yeah.
That a lot of people just really aren't prepared for. You need this setup. What you need? What you need? What you need? This. You need three tables and piping drapes and. You need this schedule. Like they were like, well, the union guys, man, we got to take a break every 4 hours. And I'm like, the stage is in use the entire day. You got to figure out how to get a break. Well, we're still playing, I guess, but so there's a lot of behind the scenes things where they're just, well, this isn't normal. Because
it's finally what I ended up having to say to some people was like, it's crazy. Like there's so many things going on, and I had to explain. They were like, my band kept making the joke of like, "You're on the board, Aaron. Don't you know that this is happening?" No, because that's not my committee. And that's not like what I'm working on. So like, not everybody knows what's happening. But then the other thing is like, everything you mention, anytime you mention something that's like, "Oh, this should happen," or "They should do this," or this, it's been thought of, and there's reasons. Guarantee you. Because there's been a team of how many people are on the board?
20.
Yeah, so 20 people. There's a team of 20 people who have done nothing but thought about this event in some way, shape, or form for the past year. If you're thinking about it, they probably already have. And if it's not happening, there's a reason. And like logistics are a bear. And like now that I've run a 501c3 for long enough, I have so much like sympathy for like every like little paperworky thing that could possibly make something not go the way you wouldn't want it to or whatever, because it's just the way it is.
Yeah, I mean that's so true. Like we're gonna start to get these evaluations, these feedback surveys from the contest, and there's gonna be a lot of suggestions in there, and some of them are gonna be great suggestions, and I will be shocked if there's anything in there that we haven't already thought of.
Needs doors on solo and ensemble.
Yeah, we didn't think we needed to think of that.
Yeah.
I was like, is this an Alabama thing? Like, what is going on?
But all the thing, need doors also helps if they fit.
Yes. It's like they threw away the one door that's 3.5 feet wide, and they don't have anything else. That everything else is 3 feet. And they, it's like, why are you throwing away doors before you get the new door? It doesn't. I would never
So I
do
had
that in my house.
I proctored the trombone room. And so I had to sit there and hold the door closed because the door wouldn't close. So I had to hold the door closed the whole time. So like, if my chair is a soloist, you just see my dumb ass over here like the whole time. I'm just holding the door. And remind me again, I'm just so tired. What was the trombone judge's name?
Brad Palmer.
He was phenomenal. He was a great person to work with. He got put into the worst situation. I do not envy him because those trombones came to play. And I was there for slow melody, and they were good. Like everybody played real well. Like no one was bad, which is great. And I've hosted enough solo and ensemble events to know that there's normally the winners and then the rest. You know what I mean? But somebody, so we like you're getting Autumn Leaves and Nessun Dorma and Abide with Me, and then somebody comes in with the Fantasy for Trombone, the Elizabeth Rom, which is like a full recital piece.
Yeah.
Fast slow is like it's sonata form or whatever. It's got like all the stuff. And he's not a brass band person and he doesn't normally do it. So like they leave and like and we're switching to technical and he goes, "Hey, was that slow melody?" And I was like, there was a slow melody. There was in fact a slow melody. And the problem was is like she also, the person who played it, crushed it. Like she played stupid well. Oh man. But it was a great time.
Well, I mean, that's one of the funny things about the solo and ensemble thing is like I actually have many times have thought we should just have a trombone category and a cornet category, not separate between the two, because there isn't really a good way to police, should that be in the in the slow melody category or should it be in the technical? I mean, you kind of should.
Also, it cuts out what you can do as well, like
yeah.
in a lot of ways, because like, for instance, like you can't play pantomime because half of it's slow melody and half of it's technical,
Right.
So it changes the way, like, and if you do a theme and variations,
right,
if you do like Grandfather's Clock, there's a slow melody in there, like technically,
right. So that I kind of think that we should investigate that.
I will say though, I did like, because this was the first year with the change of there were no solos happening at any point in the competition for the bands, right? Like there was a hard stop and then competition started.
Yes.
And I like that a lot.
Yes.
More people attended solos and more people attended quote lower section bands because they weren't getting split both ways.
Well, and also some of those people that performing in the bands could participate in the solo competition without thinking.
It wasn't the logistical nightmare. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't do both because my solos, it could, the solo competition would go to 3, sometimes 4 o'clock, in the afternoon. And we, this was a lot of money to do this, but we hired a judge for 5 solo rooms, a percussion room and an ensemble room, specifically so we could get as many solos as we can before 1 o'clock, where that hard deadline is, where it's like we can't do any more.
So how much more? Because we had a lot of bands this year, but how much more jam packed do you think NABBA can get before something has to happen, schedule wise?
We could probably. You mean and have it affect the solo and ensemble competition?
Right. Well,
three.
I mean, we ended the competition ended at what, 11?
What competition? The solo and ensemble?
We were done on Saturday at like 11.
No. The awards were at 10 o'clock, a little after, about maybe 10:10, 10:15, something like that is when we started it. So we were out of there by 10:45. Most people were. And it was a little bit longer than last year. Last year I was out of the building by 10:30.
But you add like, and I think where Amy's going with this is like you add 5 bands to that, and now we're getting out at midnight.
Yeah, we went from 30 bands last year to 37 bands this year. If we add 5 more bands, we have to start at noon, 11 o'clock on Friday, which means the solo and ensemble, thing has to be reimagined a little bit.
How many bands was the largest now? Because this was the second largest.
This is the second largest. It's 37 bands. 38 was in 2019. That was the largest.
Wow.
Probably roughly about the same amount of soloists as that year as well. So, so there's 150, I think 152 solos and, maybe 20.
You don't realize it when you're seeing like 9 people here, 5 people there. You don't realize 100 and how.
Ask Doug Lindsay, who did a fantastic job of organizing the solo and ensemble, and I'm so grateful for him because with him doing it meant that I didn't have to do it. Because I was just like, here, I did it last year, and I was like, here, Doug, this is the solo and ensemble contest. It's yours now. And how he did all of that and still played in the Georgia brass band and still played the solo in the competition, everything is like, good Lord, that's crazy. But that was a huge mess. And he tried to do all the, schedule the piano rehearsals, and he found a couple of accompanists. And when we didn't have enough accompanists to staff everybody that wanted one, it's just an unbelievably difficult task. And he hit it out of the park. He really crushed it. So, but it's a logistical and planning nightmare for the organization to do. Like this whole contest should, 1,200 participants, with all of that. I mean, if this was a real like conference, you wouldn't have a volunteer staff putting this together. You'd have a paid staff of 10 people putting this together. We're either we're the stupidest people or the craziest people on the planet for doing this as volunteers. So obviously we're not going to catch everything. Like my biggest mistake, because I was dealing mostly with the piano, putting the program together, is that we never put a band schedule in the program. I sent it to 7 people to prove. I said, I've read this thing like 14 times. Can you guys look at this and tell me what's there? And everyone's like, that looks good, looks good, looks good. And I was like, did you read this? We get there.
You get
hey, do you have a band schedule in here? And I was like, sure, we got a band schedule in here. It's right on page. I was like, oh, it's no big deal. We've got an app. The app will tell you everything you need. You go to the app and it's still listed as, we had some glitches with the app, and it had the bands listed by their draw letter and not the band name for a while. And I was like, well, they can go to the app and they'll know exactly who's playing. No, they won't. But I remember thinking like, if this is the worst thing that I mess up this weekend, then I'll be okay. Because all you have to do is just go sit in the hall and listen. It doesn't matter who shows up. Just listen to everybody.
I mean, you might as well anyway.
Yeah, but I do think that was probably the biggest screw up I had. And if you think about all the layers of things that I was dealing with, that's pretty damn impressive.
Oh no, in general.
For me, because I'm pretty good at messing things up when I want to.
No, in general, I think everybody, like, it's a nightmare to put together. Like it's no, like anybody who watches it all look at it, but like but also like the people who are like putting out all the fires, like Mark and Doug and stuff like that, like great, like.
Yeah, well, I mean, Mark did an unbelievable job, and I will also say, while it is like a nightmare to do and a ton of time and effort, it's also probably one of the most satisfying things to do when you get to the end of it and you're like, wow, all these people, had the time of their lives, majorly inspired, played great music, all of this stuff, and you had a big part to do with it, and it's like wow, this is pretty cool. It's a major event.
I mean, it's cheesy, but it's changing lives.
Yeah, it means a lot to a lot of people. So it feels really good to like I truly, I sacrificed a lot to make it happen, personally, with time and energy and all that. But, it's really worth it to know that, 1,200 people had you know, a really good weekend of making music and listening to music and everything. And so it's, I'm glad this was my last one that I'm really going to be the one in charge of planning. But and I only did two of them because my first 2 years as president, that was COVID, and we canceled those two.
I don't know if you'd want to trade the pandemic situation for running another one of these though, because that was its own little.
I'd rather run a contest than deal with the crap that came with COVID. Seriously, that was the worst nightmare ever. That really sucked. I don't think people will ever know how much that sucked. Having to make the decision to cancel those contests, having to deal with the political bullcrap that came with masks and 3 feet distancing and bell covers and all the crap that came with that. It was a nightmare. The conversations about that were mind-numbing. I'd rather rewrite the rule book 10 times and that's a nightmare, than to deal with COVID ever again. It's just, it was awful. But at the end of the contest weekend, I think there were more happy people this year than last year, because I think things went pretty smoothly. So,
I'll tell you what. I mean, one adjustment that was made for this year versus last year is that we really appreciated being in the second section is the 2 days across the board, and also having the opportunity to play in the big room.
Yeah,
it made it feel less clinical, because the black box doesn't sound bad or anything like that, but it does feel like you're like walking in for adjudication, whereas the performing hall feels like you're going in to play a concert. And
it's a significantly the concert hall is significantly better than the Playhouse, and the splitting them up did mean that the second set we got 9 more bands that got an experience to play in that hall. That was a logistical, positive byproduct of that. But
I had like 15 people who have never played in a hall that size before. Like that's the biggest stage they will ever step foot on.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And it sounded great. It's like you're standing in front of the band and you're like, wow, it's loud. I mean, everybody knows that hall is loud. They sit in the audience and they know that it gets loud, but it's really good at handling the softs as well. It's like you feel like sometimes when you play in a hall that's loud, everything is loud. But this one, when you play like that beginning of the chorale at Jay and You're the Dragon, it was soft. You could hear that it was soft. So the hall is sensitive to all of the dynamics, even though that it does get blisteringly loud with tam-tams going crazy. For me, it's just exciting. I loved it. My Apple Watch was going, warning, your exposure.
It was so much fun. Like heading into the final stretch of Year of the Dragon, the whole stage is going. Everyone's doing all the and it's just like the whole stage is like vibrating under our feet. It was a really cool moment.
Yeah. All right. So our poll question for this week.
All right.
How many bands are going to show up next year to NABBA as a choice piece playing Year of the Dragon?
Ooh. Let's say two across two sections.
The person who gets it correctly gets a free New World BrassCast t-shirt. That we will make up specifically.
We will make.
I think people are going to show up to it in different sections too.
I don't think anybody's going to do it.
I don't think so either.
I think it's going to be 0.
I think next year's going to be 0, and then the number will just slowly.
There's always one.
There's always right.
Yeah, last year was the first year that I can ever remember that there wasn't one, which opened the door for this, because we had 2 years with the pandemic, and last year no one did it. So you had a 4-year gap, before it was played. So it's like, all right, if we don't do it, we'll never get to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a super cool thing I thought for this contest. Of course, you know, um, I always call it Remember the Titans. I don't know why, but Titans Progress. Like Remember the Titans. I think they really should rename it. Um, but one of the things I found out that I didn't really know because I wasn't playing that piece and I didn't have the score, but the Leland band did the premiere of that. And Howard Evans was the conductor, and he was the judge. He was one of the judges.
Hmm.
Oh, that's cool.
So he knew that piece as well as anybody.
Yeah,
um,
that's really cool.
that was pretty cool. But next year, the Oliver Westby Other Lives is a superb piece. It's new. No one's ever done it in the United States or Canada. So it's going to be something that's going to be really exciting. I think are they using it for the, I think people you've been using it as choice pieces, but it hasn't been done as a test piece yet, I think.
I think I did do that research. So I
But
need to buy
it's,
that score.
Does he remember that research though? That's the question.
No, not at all. Oh my God.
What?
Doing the all right, y'all. I just came off of like finishing my DMA stuff. And I bought the score for Titans.
it's nasty.
I did so much score study. I did so much research. I did so much looking at all the bands and stuff in like February. As soon as the first interview started on Friday night, gone. Like, none of that information existed anymore in my brain. So I'm like I'm like re-researching while they're playing. I'm like, I'm just trying. Meanwhile, like Jen Oliverio's like backstage because she has to play a solo off stage. So she's like walking backstage, setting stuff up, accosting me.
You're Googling Titan Progress.
Yeah, I'm like looking up all the things I already looked up. I'm like, oh, what about this? What's this piece about again? um, but it was just like gone. Absolutely, it's great. Like, but God, I had such a fun time doing it. I hope I'm not fired from doing that. That was a fun time.
Yeah. Now, I thought, I'm looking forward to going through and watching the live stream, for the next couple of months. Probably going to take a couple of months to go through it, but eventually, Patrick's going to be able to cut all of the live stream up and catalog them on the website by pieces and bands so that they can get, specific views like that. So, there's going to be a lot of content on there for from NABBA bands, which is going to be really kind of cool. And how about you look at the stand banners that we were supposed to have last year in time but didn't? They look really good.
They're really good. They're really good. And the award banners look really good
Yeah,
too.
the award banners were great. Tour banners knocked it out of the park with those things.
So let's see here. It has not been used as a contest test piece yet. It has been used as choice piece.
Yeah, there are two or three of those. I think some people are using it for the Europeans this year.
Oh, I mean, there's like 12 using it. But yeah, it's all Swiss championship. It's a lot from like the same two competitions.
Yeah. It's a really cool piece. People are going to absolutely go bonkers for this piece.
It's won a lot.
Yeah, because it's a cool piece.
Of the 12 times it's been the number one 5 times. And it's been number 2 once.
It's pretty cool. I also want to say, a big kudos. Like, I don't know if you guys watch Chicago do the Gabrielli Fantasy, which is very quickly becoming one of my faves as a piece. But Mark Taylor, who, I know exactly what he went through this weekend because my experience was very much the same, where you're working, doing all this work, and then you have to shut it all down and say, now I have to go do this. And that there are no other bands besides the Chicago Brass Band and the Triangle Brass Band that had the as unfocused or or more or that were more focused on just their band and didn't have many other things to deal with. Um, but Mark killed it. That piece is hard. His band played it really well. Um, Mark is an incredible person. He's very funny. He's very smart. He's a great leader for the organization. And he's one of my favorite conductors to watch because, I mean, who else is going to do a baton drop? you know, with as much style as he does. You know, it's
And
like last year he did the drop, but this year it was slammed it on the stand, but this year it was like full on mic drop on the floor. It was great.
it was funny him backstage after he did it. He was like, I did the cutoff and I'm here.
Like, what do I do?
He's like, where do I go?
Where do I go from here? And he's like, nah.
Just let go of the thing.
That's awesome.
Oh man,
it's a gem. So, well, I guess we have enough. I could talk about this probably for another hour. We could do a two-parter on this if we had to, because we just scratched the surface of probably all the stuff we could probably talk about. But it's good to finally get back into doing the podcast. We have to do some more of these.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So let us know. Let us know who we should have on. Give us some suggestions. We'll book them.
Yeah,
we'll try to at least.
We have some ideas, but we have to just start doing it. Now, I really do promise now that I'm not spending all of my time planning a contest, that we can dig into this and get some more episodes out.
Do we have a question, Aaron, or are we skipping it today? Because
absolutely not. No.
No, we're not skipping it, or no, you don't have one.
No, I do not have one. No. Not in any capacity.
Just so that people know, it's 10:40 at night. We record at night like an awful lot because that's the only time the three of us are all free.
Well, it's also like, like everybody did. We went off and did stupid stuff on Saturday, and so we didn't get. I think I drove back to Tampa on like an hour of sleep, and I had a normal night. I know, yeah, exactly, right?
I haven't done it
do dumb stuff.
10 years, 15 years. I don't, man, that was.
And like right before this, I essentially dropped my bag. I dropped my bag coming from, like, I came straight from an orchestra rehearsal that I conducted an orchestra rehearsal, came straight from there, and then we're here. You don't have a question today, folks. Your question
is Aaron,
who should we have here? That's your question.
Yeah, who should we have? That's your
that's your question. Yeah. That's your question. And you're gonna have to live with how many bands are doing Year of the Dragon next year.
Yeah,
there you go. I mean, that's a great question.
Yeah.
We'll come up with good ones for next time. All right. Well, it's good to see you guys. I'm sorry I didn't get to see you so much.
Yeah. No one saw anybody.
I think you're gonna have it.